Good morning, Dan and Amy. As the world trends in the direction of no irony and no humor, to borrow from the sainted William F. Buckley, P.J. O'Rourke is standing athwart yelling stop, or at least stop stealing my material. Stop making my parody into reality. P.J. O'Rourke has a new book out, A Cry from the Far Middle, Dispatches from a Divided Land. P.J. O'Rourke, noted political satirist, editor-in-chief of American Consequences. And again, the book, A Cry from the Far Middle, joins us now. P.J., thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Now, do we need to put a warning label on this segment the way that HBO is putting a warning label on Blazing Saddles so you understand the plot, you don't get lost in it? You understand where the jokes are?
No, I think we can probably safely dispense with a safe space trigger warning, for any morning listeners. I'm not out to offend anybody. Everybody else seems to be doing such a good job of offending everybody else that I feel sort of out of work.
Oh, really? Oh, really? You're not out to offend anybody. You write, what this country needs is fewer people who know what this country needs. You're out to offend everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think we'd be better off with fewer opinions, especially political opinions, including probably my own. It's time for everybody to shut up and go home.
Thus, writing the book. Of course. So now, do you regularly post on Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat?
No, save me. I consider social media to be looking up the devil's the light that shines out the devil's hindside. Whose bright idea was it to put every idiot in the world in touch with every other idiot? I can't. I got three kids. One of the few basic lessons we tried to teach them was not everything that pops into your mind. Not everything that pops into your mind has to pour out your mouth.
Yeah, if social media was around during the Civil War, don't you think we'd still be in a civil war?
We'd still be fighting. Yeah. Absolutely. There'd be no end to it. It's. It really it shows the virtue of the doctrine of original sin. People, deep down inside, people are horrible.
That's what I learned in grade school. Exactly. It's borne out. Are you ready to write the eulogy for capitalism and small L liberal society?
Well, I do venture into that, the death of classical liberalism in the book. I think it's more of a warning than an obit. I hope it's not gone, but people got to realize that, free markets and free people, responsible people, equality before the law, democracy that is hedged around with protection of people who are in the minorities and so on. This has brought a fabulous life to every country where it has been attempted. And we don't want to let loose of that. The result could be really disastrous.
And is there a proper amount of self-flagellation by you on behalf of all the OK boomers in the country in terms of what they have wrought over the last 50 years?
Yeah, ours has not been a pretty generation. We were raised in this sort of glorious boom that came after World War II, and we are just spoiled rotten. And not only that, but we won't get out of the way, myself included. Here I am still writing books, when it should be turned over to younger people. And we're gobbling up all the Social Security and Medicare benefits, and we're heaping up this huge burden of debt on future generations, and no wonder they're mad at us.
Well, 7 in 10 millennials say they'd vote for a socialist. What happened there?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's, part of them is just they're being kids. I started to realize with my own kids that the fall of the Berlin Wall, when we saw what socialism can really do when it gets out of hand in dictatorships, that collapse of the socialist ideal, that took place as long ago for them, for my kids, as the Great Depression did for me. And so it's ancient history as far as they're concerned, and they have a whole different idea. They think of socialism as just being a nice sort of sharing thing, from each according to his ability to each according to his need. And that works in a family, but that doesn't work out in the outside world, because, like, my ability is to make an occasional joke. My need is for a yacht, a chateau in France, and a private jet.
Yeah, those connections. Yeah.
So they don't really see. They also don't understand how huge a government you have to construct to create these socialistic ideals. And I want to say to them, be careful of how big a government you construct, because who knows who might get a hold of that government. And you'd think there's kind of a lesson in that right in the White House right now.
Well, this whole idea, millennials just being kids, Lenin and Marx were kids once too. So the trend lines are a little bit disturbing, as opposed to just relegating that to this, utopian kids with their, fanciful socialist ideas, particularly when you see it play out the way it's playing out on the streets of America's big and not so big cities.
Yeah, well, that is very disturbing. Although, of course, as I'm not only old enough to have experienced the '60s, I'm old enough to have, in my small way, caused the '60s.
Finally, we found the responsible party.
Right. Yeah, I'm the one that's willing to put my hand up and say, yeah, I did that. And it was really stupid. I mean, the country is very divided now, but it was really much worse during the '60s. We had this horrible war going on, and we had just truly terrible riots in our inner cities. We had all these idiot war demonstrations. I say idiot not because I was in favor of the war, but because our idea of trying to stop the war was to dress up in a bunch of clown clothes and act like morons, thereby probably prolonging the war for at least a couple of years.
But there are some similarities. I mean, with this COVID and the lockdowns, and then with George Floyd, we've had severe rioting here in the city of Chicago, and businesses that have burned down, and they're not coming back.
No, well, that's the sort of extra. It's amazing how quickly we sort of bounced back from the divisions of the '60s, and the COVID thing just adds this one little extra layer of gummy disgustingness. That's going to make it that much harder to bounce back. The small businesses, that is just a huge tragedy, and we're not going to realize it's be a year or two before we realize how empty our downtowns are and how they're not going to really probably fill up again.
Well, the other thing, too, is it seems like the '60s was never really resolved in this sense, that, as Shelby Steele has said in advance of this new documentary he's done with his son on Michael Brown and Ferguson, that slavery is not the original sin of America. It's the idea of race as a means to power is the original sin. And so now, the '60s and the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act and some of those measures to end Jim Crow and cure the institutional inequities in this country, which were good. Now we have it going all the way to the other side of the spectrum, where the claim is being made that based on my identity, race, gender identity, and so on and so forth, I should be in power. I am entitled to these things at your expense. And that's just as dangerous now as it was in the '60s, as it was in previous generations.
Yeah, and if you codify any of that stuff into law, you're just sort of guaranteeing a hatred. It's always important to remember that America is not like a big happy family. People came here. We've never gotten along. Some people came here as a sort of scam. Some people came here as religious refugees. Some people were dragged here involuntarily as slaves. Some people were pushed here by poverty and bigotry. We're very different from each other, and we've never really managed to get along. And if we accentuate our differences, or I should say when when we accentuated our differences by having Jim Crow laws and so on, the result was absolutely disastrous. And if we codify them, in the name of social justice, the results could be just as dangerous. I mean, this is a big group of people that has never gotten along, including the original inhabitants, who were reduced by disease and demography to being foreigners in their own country. And somehow we took this mess of angry, argumentative people and turned it into the richest, most powerful, and arguably the freest country ever in the history of the world. Let's not lose that.
In a previous book that you wrote was Eat the Rich. In this book, A Cry from the Far Middle, you say it's time to make the rich people uncomfortable again. Are you softening on the rich?
No, I'm still wishing I were one of them. No, but I do think that one thing that kept class envy, kept envy of rich people at bay, was how uncomfortable rich people always looked, always dressed up in stiff collars and neckties and having to wear top hats and so on. And when you get like one of the richest people, when you get the richest person in the entire world showing up in his bomber jacket, or in the case of Mark Zuckerberg, I'm wearing his underwear in public. And you're thinking like, God, not only do they have all the money in the world, but they get to be slobs just like we do. Now that's wrong.
Yeah, that is too much egalitarianism. I agree with that.
Yeah, so I think rich people should have to go back to wearing top hats because they make really good target for snowballs. And also, back to all the rest of all the manners, all the little forks on the table, all the different glasses that you can't figure out, all the stupid sports like drowning themselves in yacht racings and breaking their neck at polo. They got to go back to all that.
Yeah, you like your rich patrician, and that's the way it should always be. Monopoly man rich.
Right, because then we really don't. God, they don't eat dinner until 8.
So your take. We've got an election coming up. I don't know if you've heard.
I did hear a little. Heard a little something about that.
And do you share some of the more dire predictions about the chaos that will ensue post November 3rd, regardless of outcome? Whenever that outcome may come?
No, I really don't think so. I don't know. I've been so wrong about American politics for so long. Since the beginning of the Trump campaign, I have just been like, I'm like the opposite of a compass needle. Whichever way I'm pointing, just go the other way in safety. But I honestly think that, the pendulum will swing. Trump was basically sent to Washington because people were very frustrated with government. They sent him down there to blow things up. He's done a pretty good job. And we're going, oh, is that a good idea? Maybe I should have thought that through a little bit more. And I think the pendulum's going to swing the other way, probably too far, getting Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as Secretary of the Treasury or something. And it'll be a mess. I think the Biden will win, and the Democrats will probably take the Senate, and then we'll have another 2 years of screaming and yelling. But I think in a way, America's been pretty good about our idiocy dying down. It flares up hot and fast, and it tends to die down pretty quickly as well. So,
and as a man of letters and somebody who's made a living with the written word, I mean, are you more concerned now than you have been in previous fits with censorship, whether coming from government or now government plus big tech, combined with this sort of Jacobin culture when it comes to people being offended?
No, not really. I mean, we've always faced, there's always been this puritanical side to America. Sometimes it comes from the right, sometimes it comes from the left. I'm old enough to remember when you weren't allowed to read Lady Chatterley's Lover, which doesn't turn out to be as dirty as I hoped when I finally got my hands on it. And it's a lot more boring than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
This tendency is always present. And again, it comes and goes. I mean, Mark Twain had... there was some big school district in Massachusetts that banned Huck Finn while Mark Twain was still alive, and he said, Aha! That I just sold an extra 100,000 copies.
Exactly right.
All about marketing.
Make it black market. I've been reading P.J. O'Rourke since Parliament of Horrors. I read in college, and always entertaining. I'm glad you're still writing books.
Me too.
Yes, Cry from the Far Middle, Dispatches from a Divided Land is P.J. O'Rourke's latest offering. He's also the editor-in-chief of American Consequences. P.J. O'Rourke, thanks for joining us, and best of luck with the book.
You are very welcome. Always good to talk to you guys.
All right, take care. Thank you so much. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Ultrasounds save lives. You can stand for life in the single most effective way by providing an ultrasound that can save the life of a baby. And you can make the difference today. A mother is